morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Palm Beach County schools facing two serious issues: how to keep kids safe as those case numbers rise, but also how to teach children who are stuck quarantined at home because of COVID exposure.
Liz, here are the latest numbers tonight out of Palm Beach County. These numbers just updated in the past hour. Right now, there are 733 students and 112 employees sick with COVID. Earlier today, the topic of sick students is what the governor talked about. CBS 12's Jay O'Brien was at that meeting. He talked to the governor today. He joins us now live with more.
Yeah, Jim, starting with the governor's comments, he was at Westgate Park to open a monoclonal antibody clinic. We asked him about COVID cases in schools, those numbers that you just mentioned, and the governor drew a hard line on quarantining kids who aren't showing COVID symptoms. Governor, on schools.
We started by asking the governor about the 600 plus kids who've tested positive in Palm Beach County schools.
Is that true, or are they being isolated because they had an exposure?
No, 3,000 are on isolation,
Okay.
600 positive.
DeSantis then coming down hard against quarantining kids who don't have COVID symptoms, something school districts believe cuts down on the virus's spread.
I think quarantining healthy kids deprives these kids of an ability to get an education. Now, maybe a parent would want a healthy kid to be quarantined if there's an exposure, but I think that should be the choice of the parent.
Under State Department of Health policy, kids should go home if they're exposed for 15 minutes or longer to someone COVID positive. In Palm Beach County, that's happened to more than 3,000 kids.
That's going to be even more challenging.
Stopping parents like Michelle Oyola McGovern in their tracks. Her daughter, Amelia, was sent home last week, and she wasn't alone.
It involved a lot of group texts among all my mom friends who are also in the similar situation.
Nobody really knew how to handle it.
No.
What even the school had trouble figuring out was how Amelia could keep up in the classroom. Despite buying smart boards with cameras, last week teachers weren't allowed to turn those on for students stuck at home. Amelia, who's back in school now, had to figure things out largely on her own.
She got homework on a lesson that she hadn't seen.
But that's changed. In a school board meeting, interim superintendent Mike Burke now saying teachers will have the option to turn their cameras on, but it still won't be required.
Do that in the best interest of their students.
This speed bump is definitely, slowing us down. And, I think the cameras will help.
But there's still no solution for the rising cases in classrooms and the students stuck at home as a result.
The cameras aren't a catch-all. Remember, they are optional. Interim Superintendent Mike Burke did say today that he was grateful for the teachers and even the teachers union who are all stepping up to try to accommodate students who are stuck at home. But there's a concern that as cases continue to rise, exposure rises, and there will be more students at home that teachers would have to accommodate.
We are barely into the new school year, and some students are already having to sit at home in quarantine. Treasure Coast reporter Denise Sawyer has more on what that's been like for those families.
St. Lucie County is where we're finding the most positive coronavirus cases among students and staff on the Treasure Coast. And according to the school district, 106 students and staff members have tested positive for the coronavirus in week 1 of this new school year. They also say that nearly 200 students and 52 staff members have been quarantined. With his backpack swinging at his side, Andrea Ballo's 6-year-old son was getting into the swing of the first week of school. He was excited because he says now he's a big boy, a first grader. But as soon as Sebastian got adjusted to his new teacher and new friends, he was potentially exposed to a person with the coronavirus and sent home.
We never had anyone sick throughout the first or second wave, or I don't even know how many wave we're counting now. I was not worried to the point where I wanted to keep them in masks. So I did opt out the second I heard the news. And the 4th day, they called me and said that I have to pick my child up because supposedly he was exposed in the classroom and he will have to stay home for 7 days.
So for 7 days, this Port St. Lucie mom of 3 has to be his teacher.
I was a little bit aggravated because I didn't know what's going to happen now with his schooling, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And the instructions weren't really given.
Unlike last year, kids cannot log on and participate in class from home. Instead, quarantined students in St. Lucie County have to learn the material online on their own. But the district chief academic officer tells CBS 12 News the district is already shifting gears.
We are concerned. We don't want students to fall behind. So we are going to add a quarantine support component where an additional teacher will reach out to the parent and also provide tutoring or additional support if that student needs it.
That's good news for parents like Andrea, who doesn't want Sebastian falling behind.
I never even had the fear, but now that it started the first week of school, I'm worried.
In St. Lucie County, there is a mask mandate in place with an opt-out option for parents. And we have learned that out of the 40,000 students enrolled in the school district, only 3,000 have actually opted out.
Palm Beach County students have been ordered to stay at home because of possible exposure to COVID since last week when school started. But now, if a student is vaccinated, they'll be allowed back in the classroom much sooner than a student who is not. CBS 12's Andrew Lofholm is outside school district headquarters where a meeting is underway right now. He joins us live. Andrew?
Good evening, Liz. So we are actually right on the edge of the property here, where behind me you can see some of the anti-mask parents out here holding up signs with a bullhorn. Now, as Jay mentioned, and as we've been reporting, masks are optional here in Palm Beach County. Parents have to opt their kids out. In fact, more than 11,000 kids have done that. But you can see this is the first meeting since school has started that actually beefed up security here. Several school district police cars here on hand. That meeting started just a few minutes ago. Now, this meeting, what they're out here for, discussing COVID rules. This is expected to be a long meeting as they discuss these things, as COVID rules can change on the fly under emergency rules that the board agreed on, that the superintendent can change the rules without their approval.
8 days since the start of full in-person learning in Palm Beach County, the school district is navigating through the highly infectious Delta variant. So far, more than 3,000 kids have been under stay-at-home orders because of potential COVID exposure. Parents have a new incentive to have their eligible children vaccinated.
If students are vaccinated and with no symptoms, we're able to get them right back into class. So that's a good incentive, I think, for our families to consider, and just helping us to avoid any further disruption.
It also applies to a child who's had COVID in the last 3 months. An unvaccinated child's time would vary away from the classroom.
Students in Florida aren't allowed to learn virtually full-time, but if you're under a stay-at-home order, here's how you can make sure you're marked present for each day that you are. First, you have to get your assignments, whether it's online or have a family member go pick them up in person. Some teachers will actually have a live camera up in the back of their classroom so students at home can follow along, and teachers will be offering virtual tutoring after school.
Interim Superintendent Mike Burke said he met with all the district principals yesterday to clear up any confusion over when a student can return to the classroom.
And there's lots of different scenarios that can play out. So we've kind of got all of our principals now on the same page. We're working closely with Dr. Alonzo and her team. They're putting additional resources into contact tracing, and I think you're going to see that smooth out in the days ahead.
So far, more than 11,000 kids have had their parents opt them out of wearing a mask this year in school. So has that correlated to more COVID cases? Well, Jupiter High School has the most opt-outs, close to 1,000, and also the most confirmed COVID cases at 30. But compare that to Rolling Green Elementary. They have 2 opt-outs and 16 confirmed cases, which is tied for 4th most in the district. I asked the county's top public health official if she thinks masks should be required in school.
Just as far as from a health standpoint, public health-wise, do you think that children should be masked in the school?
I think it's always better to allow people to have the choice of what they want to do. They tend to do it more willingly than if we mandate it. So, I think the idea of highly recommending it, certainly I would highly recommend that people wear the masks. But when you mandate something, it has a backlash that people refuse to do it simply because you're mandating them.